Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our final episode of After the Snuff this season, where we are recapping Dynamic Character Productions, Moneta Bank. I am your host, John Millsip, joined by our runner-up, Sam, and our winner of Moneta Bank, Kayla. Both of you, welcome so much. I am so happy to finally get to break down your games with you. How are you feeling today?
I mean, it was a fun night for me, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, feeling good. It was nice watching everything back and reliving moments and remembering, oh yeah, that did happen. And so happy to be here to hash everything out because in the moment there's a lot I forgot about.
Well, let's dive into this. We have a lot of game to cover, so let's start at the beginning. Both of you start off on the Oro tribe together, and you immediately suck and lose and have to go to tribal council. So, what's it like going to that first tribal council, Sam? Because this is your first game ever.
Yes.
So, what was it like? You know, you get in there, you're all hyped, and
Uh-huh.
you'll lose that first immunity challenge right away, and you're already on the floor running.
Yep. So as someone who contributed to like the suckage of that challenge, I was like, of course, like my two weaknesses are like coming up, like sports knowledge and math, like all of that showed up very quickly. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just got here. I messed up the first challenge. I'm going to tribal. I am out of here immediately. And so not only I think that like first round was so interesting because it was just sort of like, okay, a loss, we're going to tribal. I've never done this before. I now have to navigate the breakout rooms and who to talk to. And then there's the vault twist as well and trying to have conversations. And so I was like, I just kind of saw like my game like slipping away so quickly because Jen's name came out. And the reasons people wanted to vote for Jenn, you could very easily replace Jen's name with my name, and it would have been like me going home because we really didn't have much to go off of. And like Jenn and I had like a really good conversation, like right at the end. And in my mind, it was like we had great conversations and bam, it was tribal. And at that point, it was like too late to change anything. So that like first round was like, this is setting the tone for the rest of my game. And I think I'm going to like go home because of this. So that first round was definitely a lot to process in a very short amount of time.
Now, Kayla, in opposition to that, you've played a lot of live reality games and you're kind of used to this type of pace and everything. How does it feel for you having a little more experience with that, knowing, okay, this is how I have to approach this round now that I'm going to tribal council?
I think it definitely helps that I've done it a few times, but being online is like so different and like the dynamics are different. Being able to like talk to people, being able to have one-on-one conversations is like really impossible, especially if you like win. So like losing was nice that we all had got an opportunity to talk to each other, but like it no matter what, it's not fun and it's stressful. And I think that first round, everybody thinks it's going to be them because the paranoia is just like so high. Like you have nothing, like Sam said, nothing to go off of. And like I do think it was going to like fall on Jenn either way, but yeah, it was stressful.
Well, Sam, you actually asked a question for Kayla on her exit post about, do you think that this, like having to go to tribal council right away, helped solidify your relationship with Kyle so that you ended up working with him so closely in this game?
I think no matter what, we would have worked
Mm.
together. The first conversation, I think it was on the first episode. I'm like, I want to work with you. And like
And
I
that
just
was like so fast to me. I was like, holy shit, I didn't realize that was the level of gameplay I should have been. You were in that room for 2 seconds and you said, I'm working with you, and then he was gone. So
I got
watching it back, I was like, oh, I now get it. This is what I should, that's the level I should have been.
Yeah, which I think is an experience thing. And I got some advice from a friend like the week
Mhm.
before that they were like, just be quiet, like don't throw any targets. But like if you find someone you want to work with, like tell them how great they are, tell them you want to work with them. So I was like, I'm gonna just do that. And it worked. I picked out Kyle right away. I was like, oh, he's like interesting. And was like, boom, you're my ally, and you have no choice in the matter.
Was there anything in particular that drew you to Kyle that made him stick out and make him that person that you wanted to go to in that capacity right away?
I truly don't remember. I think like when we were all like in groups talking, like we were all just having fun, but I just like connected with Kyle the most. So
Okay. Sam, did you feel like you had that connection with anyone in that first round at all?
I mean, honestly, if I probably did, it was Jen. And that's what sucked about kind of the timing, was that I don't think Jen and I had like a one-on-one conversation until towards the end of that round. And at that point it was pretty solidified. And so I remember like walking away from that conversation with Jen and being like, crap, I made a great connection, but I know everyone else is voting for her. And I definitely came in to the game being like an anybody but me strategy. And so Jen's name was not Sam. And so I was like, I'm gonna write this down, but I do wish, like watching everything back, I do wish either her or myself had gone to the vault and been able to have gotten like an idol or something. I think that's probably one of my like biggest regrets. Because like none of us went to the vault that round. And seeing it play out in later rounds, how important that was, and we would have had the currency to buy something. So it sucked to be able to vote off like the person I probably had like the best connection with. It benefited me the next round with her willing her coins, but I definitely wish I was able to have like changed something up in that round because I wanted to work with Jen, but at that point I thought it was too late to make anything happen.
And on a first vote, it's really hard to
Mhm.
sway it, especially because like this is a pile-on vote. Everyone's voting for Jen. It's so hard. It's really there's like kind of like this risk reward analysis you have to make of like, is it worth it sticking my neck out for this person who I've literally known for 20 minutes at this point?
Right.
Who, yes, I have a connection with, but is me pushing for them not to be there just going to get the target on me here in a situation where there's no reason for anyone else to vote for anyone?
Right. And so as much as I wanted to like maybe save Jen, again, you could have swapped mine's name with Jen and I could have been the one. At that point, I really, if it wasn't Jen and it wasn't me, I don't really know who else it would have been. And that's what was so hard about that first round, is we were literally had nothing to go off of. It's so hard to have these like conversations about like, who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing? And then also be like, but then we also got to like vote you out. And so it's a hard thing for that to be like the starting pace of the game, is balancing the get to know you with the strategy, and like, okay, great, I'm glad I know where you're from, but I'm probably gonna have to vote you out. So great combo.
And especially in this first challenge where you don't actually see how much people are starting, you can kind of get an idea of like how long it took Jen to find an answer. But the fact of the matter is, when we get into Andy C going in there and doing the math, there are 3 people with the wrong answer, but you don't know who that is at that point. He doesn't know who that is at that point. So you don't even know who did worse at this challenge to base the vote on that.
So
Yeah,
we
that's
would have
true.
lost no matter what.
Oh
Like,
yeah, there were like 3 of you. I think there were 3 people who didn't know the answer to the riddle and guessed A1.
I was
It's
one of
just like
them.
as they were picking through. So yeah, you
We were
probably would have
doomed.
lost no matter what.
yikes.
But enough with the first round. Let's move to the second round where things get even more interesting. We get our first swap, and immediately you're asked, okay, vote for someone on the other tribe. And then they become the tribe captain and they are picking new tribes. What are your thoughts when... So Kayla, let's go with you here. What are your thoughts when Kyle is one of these team captains?
I thought, well, surely Kyle's gonna pick me, but also like being one of the first people to choose, like you have to be careful about what you say, because if you are choosing immediately one of your allies, people are gonna know they're your ally, and then also then it just sets the trend for picking the same tribes over. So I was kind of happy that the first pick didn't do that, and then the rest obviously did that. So it was like frustrating, but I was happy because I knew I was working with Kyle, so thought he would make the right choice. I don't know. Worked out.
Oh, yeah, it worked out for sure. I mean, we can't deny that at this point. Sam, on the other hand, you're not picked.
I
How
was
does
not.
that feel at that moment?
Okay, it's never a great feeling to not be picked, but again, similar to like it was so hard choosing a name for the first round, you literally have nothing to go off of. And like literally the only thing that the other tribe had to go off of was like maybe like a Zoom background or something like that. And so it sucked to not be picked. It worked out in my favor in some ways, but maybe not in others, because we see what happens like with Rob. In the next round, but I think it definitely set the tone for the rest of the game moving forward. So I didn't take it personally, but you want to take it personally, but really you have nothing else to go off of. And if anything, it helped me at least for the first couple of rounds, but then I think it caused problems later down the road.
I think our tribe's fondness of Sam was like actually a good thing that he left, because like we were willing to like save him.
Yeah.
Well, like the NDC was like going to save Rob or Sam. So like we really liked them both. And so then when it did come time to like merge, like we all still were like, but Sam, you're like with us, you know? So I feel like that was like kind of good.
Mhm.
It endeared you to both sides.
Yeah, but I think that like endearment of like being on both sides and having options, I think that's where like things got like tricky for me, like in the merge of people not really knowing. And half the time I didn't really know where I wanted to go. And so it was an interesting way. But again, it was like, okay, I just lost the first challenge. I was probably gonna be, I thought I was gonna be the first person to vote, and then I wasn't picked. And I was like, well, this is a great way to start off this game. And when they said it was gonna be a Sudoku puzzle, like my face dropped because I was like, I'm not great with numbers. You saw my math in that challenge, but so I was happy to be able to like pull off that puzzle. I had a lot of time, which I was thankful for. I didn't need the whole time, but I was in that vault for a significant amount of time.
And that, I think, is one of the big things about that twist that makes it kind of difficult, is because that puzzle, it's a Sudoku-esque puzzle. It's not the most complicated, but you had essentially 40 minutes to solve it.
Yeah.
And the rewards you get for that is anything on the vault menu. But you also have this advantage where Jenn just happens to have bequeathed her 2 coins to you. So you are the richest person in the game at this point, and you're locked in the vault, and no one else can get there. So walk us through that decision, the decision of which advantage you got with when you won the puzzle, and then the decision to purchase a second advantage at the same time.
Yeah, so I don't know how much like thought process went into it, other than like I knew immediately I needed an idol. I wasn't picked. Everyone had the option to pick me, and I wasn't. And I knew probably whichever tribe I ended up, I was probably gonna be on the bottom. So that was like an automatic. I remember like walking through the other like options, and like one of them, like the mutiny one, I immediately was like, well, that didn't work out for Penner or for Candace, so I'm not gonna go like with that one. So it was kind of like a process of elimination. And then I was in the vault for a while, and then I think it was like hey, you're still in here, it's still open. And that's when I was like, oh, what else can I get? And that's when I was like, okay, let me go with the challenge advantage, so I can go up to whatever tribe I go in. I can show up with a piece of goodwill. I can try to hide the idol. I thought it was a brilliant move. My new tribe immediately saw through that before I even stepped on the beach. So they definitely got me there. But that's essentially kind of what I knew I needed an idol to help me. And so I spent, and like the extra coins from Jenn definitely helped, because I could extend the idol up until final 10. And then the challenge advantage, which I think left me then like with one coin. So it definitely all kind of like worked out, but I definitely wanted to bring that challenge advantage of like a gesture of goodwill. Hey, I'm a team player, don't vote me out. But they were plotting against me before I even stepped on the beach, come to find out. So,
and unfortunately for you, you happen to, I mean, somehow Oro tribe actually wins an immunity challenge, and Argento has to go. It's the tribe that has 6 original members from the same tribe, and Rob gets voted out pretty easily there. So you're stuck on there, but you do have this challenge advantage. And this challenge advantage, to be fair, this challenge advantage didn't really impact the result of this challenge at all.
We didn't need it.
No, you did not. Kayla, I want you to walk me through your tribe's decision to choose land animals here, because we tricked you. Production tricked you.
Yeah, we just thought that's the most common, so we're gonna go for it. But like we didn't really think too much about it, I don't think.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty, and when we were designing the challenge, we kind of had it this way, where it's like, even when we were testing the challenge, And I know I was in the position to choose which one to group to go for. And I was like, yeah, land animals. That totally makes sense. Those are easily definable from each other. And you don't realize how many land animals there are. And then you get to the sea animals. It's like, oh, these are kind of easier. And I said it on the After the Snuff after that episode aired. Those air animals were very easy to
that's
act
crazy.
out. But
like, what were some of the? Because like we immediately thought we had nixed air. That was not even a consideration. So what would have been some of the examples for air?
some of the examples were like owl, bat, bald eagle, which in challenge testing I had just shaved my head, so I could just point to my head about it. It was made it really easy for me, but it was a lot broader and more specific than you would think, rather than being something like bird. And yeah, like some like flying insects and stuff like that, like bees, butterflies, things like that. But alas, again, it didn't matter because the Argento tribe flew through this. Of course, the challenge advantage does help because they have to do 2 less. But then we get to the Oro tribe. And this is a fun round. This is our fun round, Kayla. You're up in numbers. There's 4 of your original Oros to the 2 Argentos in Naropa and Emily. Yet somehow this round still goes to rocks. Talk to me about it.
Well, I truly did not understand, still don't understand why that happened. Like, I think paranoia was so strong in our camp. Like, Andy C was so, like, you would have conversations with him. I feel like I was in every conversation with him that round, and we were so on the same page. So then when we get to tribal and he, like, does what he does, like, calls out Jabbar, like, it's just a whole thing. I still was just like, afterwards, I was like, but what? Why? Like, why are we doing this? I thought we were good. So let's just like pretend that didn't happen and move on.
Well, and that's the thing. In that tribal council, beyond, Andy kind of grandstanding there and making this speech, which ultimately Jabbar thought meant you were sticking with you, but he was actually saying you were flipping on you. And then he steals Jabbar's idol. How did you manage to continue working with Andy afterwards?
Well, I don't really know if we did. I think like at that point he didn't have a choice. He was just gonna do what he had to do to like survive. But like it was really hard to like have a conversation after that and be like, so can we just like move on or no? And like I was fine to just move forward, but I think like Jabbar and Andy, they really had to be the ones to work it out. So it really didn't have too much to do with me.
Sam, it looks like you had something to say there.
Completely forgot whatever it was.
Okay, that's fine.
Not important.
How about when you watched back this episode? Because you guys are all informed. Yes, rocks happen. When watching back this episode, did you think it was anywhere near as chaotic as it ended up being?
No, because like I don't quite remember if we got the full story. I remember like people were telling, like I was getting like different things from different people. I think some people were trying to downplay what had happened. But I definitely like I got the vibe when they all showed up at the merge that like they were a pretty like fractured group and just were happy like to be around to have like other people because what had just happened in the previous 2 rounds. And I can't remember at what point we got all of the pieces in the story. So watching it back was just really interesting to play because I think what was interesting, like moving forward though with like Andy C, is that I think it was hard to work with Andy C because I think a lot of his game was then trying to like make up for like the blunder in that round. He still seemed pretty loyal. So then it was surprising that like he didn't go in the like next round because of the kind of chaos that had happened. So
I think we just knew, and I think even Jabbar knew like what was gonna happen if we move forward without him. And we were just like, that was just not an option for any of us, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're talking about it now because we got to the advantage part of the game. Let's talk about the vault. Kayla, you were a mainstay in the vault. You went there a lot, very frequently, and it doesn't quite make it into the edit where you can see exactly how many times you visit the vault every round.
Well, like the first round, we forgot that the vault existed, so none of us went. But once I caught on to like watching the rooms and like where people were going, the vault became so fun for me because I would, as soon as McKenna would be like, "You can go," I'd be like, "Oh, goodbye." I'd be the first one in the vault as every round that I possibly could. Like nobody ever beat me if I was trying to go. And then I would just watch who went in. I would go in after them, see what they bought. Watch who went in, go after them, see what I got. It's probably not the right way to use the vault, but this is what I was gonna do. So it worked out really well for me. And like I know some people hated the amount of advantages, like Vogl, but like you hated them because it didn't work for you. Like I don't think there was a lot of advantages in the game, but there was never like a tribal situation in which like 3 idols were played or anything like that. So it was kept, I think, as tight as needed. And some people benefited from it and some people hurt from it. And that's not really our fault if they didn't do a good job running to the vault.
Sam, on the opposite hand, you kind of didn't go back to the vault until the very end of the game.
Yeah, PTSD, trauma, locked away. But like at that point, like because I had spent all my coins, I had the idol until final 10, and we weren't going to tribal, we weren't getting coins, people were not bequeathing me their coins, and because I felt like I couldn't get like a good grasp on the like social game, I just chose to prioritize my time in the breakout rooms because people like Kayla and Kyle were immediately going, and because of the rule of like only one person, it's like, well, like I'm not gonna be able to beat them in there. And so I just also didn't have the funds or the resources to benefit fully from the vault.
Yeah, and I mean we're almost through the pre-merge here. We get to, Kayla, your tribe losing again, which is wild when you consider how many immunities, individual immunities, you end up winning in this game that your tribe just couldn't win in the tribal phase. Pretty impressive.
I hate losing, so it's really annoying that they all suck.
But Sam, at that point, like you have secured yourself at this point into the merge. How's that feel knowing that you didn't have to go to tribal council? You had this time to kind of bond, not one-on-one with this new group of people who you didn't start the game with, but in a group setting. How did it make you feel going into the merge?
So, I mean, this is where like it was nice being safe, though I do wish we had gone to tribal at one point so that they could eat their own because I had my idol, so I was going to be safe. And I didn't know it at the time, but like Andy had the seal a loser, so I was going to be safe regardless of what went down. And so I really do wish we had gone to tribal at least at one point to knock one of their original members out. But it also would have opened up the breakout rooms. I mean, we were starting to get a little stir crazy by that second round because we're all in the room and we can't be like, hey, let's like start talking about Vogl and voting him out because Vogel's in the room. We can't go anywhere. And so it was nice to be safe. I don't know like if like whether it was the first or the second round. I still think I don't think I would have gone home because I had the idol and I had Andy like saving me, but like literally I show up and watching it back, I mean, they had advantages ready to swipe my advantage. They had all come up with a story. I mean, they had already decided before I showed up that they didn't want to work with me. And I think that set the tone moving forward. So I do wish we had lost. But I remember like Evan like busted into like as soon as I got there and was like, yeah, I mean, we didn't like want to vote out Rob, but we kind of did because he wasn't on our original tribe. And that's when I was like, hello, like you do realize what tribe I came from, right? So glad to know where I stand in this. So the pre-merge was interesting. It definitely, I wish we could have gone to tribal to solidify some more things because we were starting to get a little stir crazy in there. But then on the flip side, once Oro had shown back up, I mean, they had looked like they had just gone through like war. Like it was so we're like, well, maybe tribal was kind of a scary place to be. So
Yeah, it's hard to really understand how draining tribal council can be when you continuously go there, especially when you have to go through a rock situation right away where you're not safe from a vote. Kayla, when that vote after, like the Naropa boot, how easy was it for all four of you just to come together and be like, no, we actually have to get Naropa? Was there any consideration of voting out either Jabbar or Andy in that situation?
I feel like Jabbar and Andy maybe were kind of like aiming at each other that round. I don't totally remember, but I remember thinking this is very easy. I'm going to let everyone know how easy this is, and then I'm going to do what I'm saying, and then we're just going to see what happens from there. Because I think like them throwing the confusion in was like not going to help anybody. We could have like ended up in some weird situation that none of us wanted to be in. So for me, it was easy.
Mm-hmm.
But I also just didn't really like care. Like I thought I was gonna go out so early in the day that like I was just like, I'm just gonna see what happens. Like I'm not putting too much like, emotional energy into this at this point, because I was like, it could be me and that's fine. I'm glad it wasn't, but it was just like at that point we were just having fun. I felt like
Of course,
maybe they
yeah.
weren't, but
Yeah, and I think that is a real important thing to be doing when you're playing these games. If you're not having fun while playing these games, consider maybe not playing them. Because I think that was one thing that was really apparent with the Oro tribe. Despite how stressful everything was, everyone was having such a good time playing the game. So we get to the merge. And in the merge, we have the new Oro tribe having only 4 people, the new Argento tribe having 6 people. One of those people was Sam, who was originally on the Oro tribe. And you're immediately put into partners for this first challenge. And Kayla, you end up winning the challenge with Vogl as your partner. How did you feel, first off, about having Vogl as a partner in that situation? And how did it feel having immunity for the first round of the merge?
Having Vogl as a partner was honestly awesome because I wanted somebody who was like competitive and wanted to win, and that is Vogl. He does not want to lose, and I respect that about him. So that was fine with me, and like we crushed it. Like there were just like no excuses, no mistakes, just do it and be done with it, and that's what we did. And obviously it feels good. Like winning anything is so fun. Like winning a group challenge is fun. Winning an individual challenge is so fun. So just like that moment, and then also knowing that there was probably going to be like the majority alliance like coming after like the smaller of us, it felt good. And like the whole time throughout the game they maintained that they weren't trying to wipe out like the other tribe, but they were they not? They fucking were.
They were. They were. I think it's pretty easy to say they were trying to. They kind of jumped on the opportunity to get rid of Vogl at the next vote. But it was very clear they wanted to keep their numbers. They wanted to hold their numbers, and they wanted to keep those. And you know what? I can't blame them. If you go into a situation where you have numbers, keep them.
Totally, but
yeah,
own up to it when I'm like sitting there at the end of the game being like, this is what you were doing. And they were like, no, we weren't.
yeah. But you know what? At the same time, I don't think they thought they were doing it. I don't think a lot of people in the game thought they were keeping that way. And because there's that point in one of the tribal councils where you mentioned that late in the game. And I honestly think they didn't realize that. I think it was the Simona boot at this point when you're bringing it up. Yap had to go because he was the old, because you and Kyle were both off the table at that point because you were both safe for one reason or another. So the only person from Argento who had gone at that point was Vogl, which was immediately followed by Andy going out the door too. So I think, yeah, I broke out that way. I don't know if they actually intended it to be that way. But optically, it definitely looks like they were trying to stick together.
Yeah. Also, it was, it was small. Like the merge was not huge. So like just a couple numbers are everything at that point. Like they had 2 on us and that was all that mattered. So like it might not seem to them like they weren't taking out one of us, but it was just the right amount that it could have been none of us at the end. It could have been a final 3 of Evan, Sam, and Karli, who I do group Sam in with them,
Yeah, I mean, there was never a point where Oro had the majority in the game.
Yeah.
But Sam, at that merge tribal, you are lucky enough to have an immunity idol, but you are questioning whether or not to use it. So walk us through that decision. Because it seemed like it was one that you were really struggling with through your confessional.
Yeah, so like at that point, that it was like the last time I could use it. So I couldn't extend it any further. I didn't think I was going to go, but it was like that round it was interesting to watch back because the entire round I was told it was going to be Kyle. And then the last couple of minutes, yeah, Yap's name was thrown out there, and then Evan busts in and says it's like Jabbar. So it was a very kind of like chaotic round. And so I think I was just going through of like, okay, do I play it? Do I not? Is it better to say that I had it and I didn't play it because I didn't need it? But because at the very end with all of the names kind of emerging from all of the episodes I watched, I was scared of rocks. And so I was like, I'm gonna play this just in case something else happens. I don't think it's going to be a straight down the 9 versus 1 sort of thing. So just in case there's some rogue votes and there's a tie, I'm gonna play it so I don't get rocked out. But I was having a hard time like watching it back as to why they were so set and keeping me out of the Jabbar vote because they didn't have the numbers and the math wasn't mathing for me until the very end when Evan said that the vote had like flipped to Jabbar, but it was Jabbar the whole time, but that the original Argento had decided early on that this was going to be the group and I was left out of that. So the Jabbar vote, like honestly, it gave me like whiplash. I was so confused the next couple of rounds of like what had just happened. I was told one thing, I was left out, and so I was having like a hard time like playing like catch up because the very end of that round had gotten kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's almost like you were the only person at that point in the game who had met everyone in the game going into the merge. It's almost like instead of it being the advantage it should have been, it was almost a detriment to you because it meant that everyone was like, we can work with Sam, but we don't need to.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem like anyone was really willing to commit to working with you. And I think that's something that kind of lasts throughout the entire game, where we see your name thrown out as an option several times throughout each of the subsequent rounds. Was there any point where you felt you had like a number one in this game, someone you could completely trust?
No, not at all. Like I think people said maybe just enough to make me feel good with them, but there was never like a Kyle, Kayla, like this 2 seconds we're in here, we're gonna like lock this down. And like I realized like I was definitely like holding back, but I was holding back because I wasn't getting much, but I probably wasn't getting much because I was holding back, but it was just kind of hard to figure out. And I think because I was in the vault and then I was safe for those 2 rounds, going to tribal again opens up those. So everyone else had like time to like play like with other people where I felt like I kind of like transferred into the game like halfway like through. And so then I think it was just much easier for people to like, I have my exit buddy, I have this my number one, and I'm not gonna look beyond that. And so whether it was a tribe strong game or like my number one thing, it was hard then trying to make inroads with some of the groupings. And I think part of that was because I didn't have time, aside from that first vote, and that was a pretty, straightforward. We worked together, but it was just sort of like we're doing that because we don't want this to be our name. So I didn't, even in that first round, I didn't have much time to solidify things with Kayla, Kyle, Andy, or Jabbar, and then everyone else had been able to go to tribal in the pre-merge phase, except for me, aside from that first round. So I think that definitely helps set up things. And again, going back to, before I even showed up on the beach, the original Argento had already decided we're not even going to consider like working, with it. We're going to get the knowledge is power, and then we're going to come up with some story about boys and girls and voting and all of that. I wasn't quite following that logic, and so I think that definitely made the beginning of the merge hard. But yeah, I didn't have a number one. I was kind of playing by myself, and it was hard trying to get inroads, and I was holding back, but I was holding back because I wasn't getting much from people.
Playing the middle is also like a skill. So like you played the middle extremely well. It's just you didn't have opportunity with it being like me, Kyle, Karli, and Evan at the end to like make a move or do anything. Like you were stuck in between like the
I
crazy
was, and like the other
people.
thing too is that like there were some loud ass personalities on this team.
There's
And
one
so
right
like
here.
right. Like so it was very hard even like jumping into a room and conversations are happening and a lot of space was taken up by a lot of people. And so as much as I maybe wanted to have agency or throw something, I literally couldn't get a word in edgewise. And like I remember the money challenge, that second challenge of the pre-merge. I remember that challenge from one of the episodes that had been played previously. And we were trying to figure out a strategy. And I kept trying to get my voice in, but there were some people on my team that just dominated. So it was very hard trying to work against some of these like really big personalities between the final five, but even like Andy C and Vogl and Yap. And it was just kind of like there were a lot of talkers on this cast and made it very hard for those of us that need just maybe a second to process.
Yeah.
Well, at the merge, Kayla, obviously you're going in with a solid number one already in Kyle, but we see you connect with Evan here. And we know from Evan's after the snuff, you two had briefly met at a group dinner prior to the game before. Had you guys actually like spoken to each other before the game?
Not really, like in a group setting of like, oh, where are you from? Like that kind of thing, which like we kind of go through in the beginning of the game anyway. So like I would say pretty much no. Like if I saw him again on the street, I wouldn't run up and say hello at that point, you know? So yeah, but I just the second I saw him, I was like, so we're gonna work together, right? Like that's the thing that's happening with her. I just didn't really like to give anyone the choice of whether they were working with me or not. I just told them they were. Um, and that really worked out for me. We struck a great deal of him protecting Kyle and me, and I protecting him and Karli, which definitely benefited me more than him. Like, I don't think he needed as much protection, but I think like having that solid block, whether we voted together or didn't, was like beneficial to all sides and really getting us to the final five of the game.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And Evan played as much as like Sam, you played the middle. Evan played a very different game in the middle, and it's interesting to see how it impacted your game, Kayla, because it really opened up a lot of information for you, where you had this flow of information, and Sam, you sometimes like didn't have a flow of information because of it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even say I had a flow of information because there were so many rounds that I never even got to speak to Evan one-on-one. And until we were one-on-one, like we were not pretending in bigger conversations that we were working together, you know?
Yeah.
So like a lot of the votes, like I just went into like based on what I wanted to see happen. And that's why I had all of the live tribals and like making sure I had conversations with people or called out conversations that were happening because nobody was sharing anything with me. And I know like Sam probably understands, like it's frustrating to not have a clue because if it's like, if you don't know who it is, it might be you. Like that's really scary. And so I just, yeah, I don't know.
It is interesting because information is so powerful in this game. And Kayla, you've mentioned your boisterous behavior of tribal councils, and it's something, and I commended it several times at this point. It is something people don't take advantage of a lot of the time, is the fact that, especially in our game where tribal council comes across as very structured, right? Alex asks questions to every single person, and we go to vote. But in the end, tribal council is always here for the players. And Kayla, you have in like the history of DCP, you are the person to grab that opportunity the most and use it in order to gain information. And we really see that in the Vogl vote. And you throughout the post merge of this game, you really talk about the chaos you want to create in this game. And this is where it really starts, is this vote. You are saying people are saying things when other people were saying things, and you're calling them out at tribal council for things they haven't even done, and you're passing it off as like, maybe I know that this is like you said this, maybe I don't know that you said this, but I'm going to claim you said this. What's like, talk to me, tell me what motivated you to just take control of tribal councils?
Well, truly, I think that's just how I would like to always play a game of Survivor. But I think the experience of playing games in the past has helped because it just like makes the stakes lower. I think these games, like even a 1-day game, like can be extremely like emotionally draining and like stressful. And so I just wanted to take the pressure off of myself and just like have fun and like say whatever I wanted. But like I did come into the game being like, I'm gonna sit back, like I'm gonna be chill. And I think a little bit I was at the beginning, but as soon as Kyle like just like kind of cracked the door, I was like, let's fucking go, you know? And was just like ready to have fun. Like it's just at that point it's like it felt like whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm just gonna go for it. And also I'm like really good with a solo cup. So like I was pretty confident I would win like another challenge, you know?
Did y'all have like that code? What like was that developed before? Did y'all have like a more extensive code of like name and animal and all of that?
We just like me, Kyle barely got to speak in like almost any round, like one-on-one. So if we had an opportunity, he would say, if I say this, like this is what I'm gonna do. If I do this, this is what I'm gonna do. Or else, like if we didn't have that, he would just communicate to me directly at Tribal by saying like something. I don't know, like can't remember exactly what he was talking about most of the time, but like I would just be like, is he talking to me? I think he's talking to me. And I would just do whatever I think he was trying to tell me.
Right, because I think it was like such a genius, like strategic, like move to like use tribal because like we were never all like in one scramble room together discussing who was gonna go who, and so if you were not getting what you wanted out of it, the fact that we were all sitting there and we all no one could leave and to be able to use that time in that space, be like, hey, I don't like what I heard, or if someone fill me in, I think was a like a genius
And you
move.
don't like even when we're scrambling and there's like two large groups, like mixed alliances, like I would just be like, I'm leaving. Just so you know, I'm walking out and going to this room. So if anyone wants to come, sometimes nobody would come and I would just sit by myself because I was like, what's the point of being in that room? Sometimes somebody would come speak to me. But like I just felt like we're not accomplishing anything. And then even when I would have one-on-one conversations, nobody else was doing that. So like there was never like a good passage of information or plans being made. It's really hard on Zoom. It's really
It
hard.
is, yeah.
It is, especially when, and viewers who haven't played on Zoom might not know this, you can see who is speaking to who at all times.
Mhm.
You just open up that breakout rooms tab and you can see everything. And again, like you utilize it with the vault, Kayla, to like figure out what was going on in there all the time. And there are times, even Sam, you make a comment about it in Final Five, where Evan was pitching to you that he wanted to keep you there, and then he's speaking with Karli about voting you out because he has to, right? And it's the only one that he can do. But you can watch that on Zoom. It's part of the nature of these Zoom games and something you really have to be conscious of. But let's get into this Vogl vote. So it does seem like through everything, it was pretty determined at this point Vogl was going. Somehow, Kayla, you, Kyle, and Andy are able to not have this majority want to go for you. Everyone's just like, let's go Vogl out of here. Let's do that. It almost seems like a bit of appeasement, but we get that moment now that we're talking about tribal councils and people participating, where Kyle, despite the fact that the vote's pretty locked in at that point, Kyle says, did anyone know the Mighty Ducks? And I didn't really get to tell Kyle this in his after this stuff, but like genius to take a move that's already solidified and then make it out to be your move, despite the fact that literally everyone knows it's not your move, but kind of present it that way so that when they recall that moment, it's there. And then we see him turn it around the next round, which is this fast round. Kayla, you were not pitching Andy as the person to go here. You were pitching Karli as the person to go in this quick round. What happens when Kyle all of a sudden says, no, take that V, flip it upside down?
I just thought, again, Kyle and I didn't get a chance. So I was like, okay, maybe he's come up with something else. But at that point, I was like, I was so like blinded by like my annoyance of this situation that I was like, I'm just going to do what I said and hope that somebody else jumps on board. But I was like, whatever, he can do whatever he wants. Like, there's obviously something going on and like, I'm not aware of it. So I'm just going to let it be. I
And Sam,
trusted
in
that
this,
he wouldn't come for me, and I felt like that was
yeah.
all that mattered. As long as it's not my name, I'm good with that. And that was a round I was not safe, so I was really panicked.
Sam, how did you feel in this quick scramble round?
So the mental fatigue definitely caught up to me at this point because the turn the V upside down totally went over my head. I was so confused. I did not know my outfit at that point. I was like, the closest I could get, I was like, no, that doesn't turn into a K, so it's not Karli. So like I don't know who they're voting for. So I'm gonna vote for Kyle because he just pulled off a great move before, and that was a name I had heard a few rounds before. So he's finally not immune. So let's get him out of here. And obviously that wasn't. Everyone else knew their alphabet better than I did at that point. Because it just didn't make sense to vote out Andy C at that point. But yeah, my brain totally did not connect with I needed to turn the V upside down and make a letter. So
That's
quick
fair. I
round
mean,
got me.
you're 10 hours into the game at this point, probably, maybe. But it's been a long day at that point. It's we see that fatigue later on in the game a little bit more. But after this quick round, Andy's gone. Kayla, you and Kyle are the only two people from Oro left that aren't Sam, who moved over to Argento. And then we get this round where Kyle wins immunity on this trivia challenge. And Kayla, you go into the vault and you were rolling the bank because you had so many people bequeath you coins at this point that you had 10 coins going into the vault. And you walk away with both an immunity idol and a safety without power. And there's a conversation that you and Kyle have about which one you should use in that first round. Were you ever considering using the immunity idol instead of the safety without power that round?
I think I was for a minute just because I hadn't got a chance to think about it, to like map it out. But once I talked to Kyle, I was like, oh, like I got it. We're good. Like, don't worry, you know? But also, like, I have to say something because in the whole final tribal, people were coming for me saying, because I had answered the question about like what part of my game I felt was most important, and I said social game. And this is exactly why. Without my social game, I would not have gotten two advantages that kept me safe for 2 rounds. Like that was extremely important. I would have gone right there, and I would have gone the round after had I not saved myself.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of one of those moments where it becomes very clear how important what you had been doing at tribal council was to the way the vote goes. Because before you just get yourself out of there with the safety without powder, you say, I'm voting for yeah. And then you're like, actually, I'm not voting for anyone, peace. And everyone still votes for yeah. So
I was
Sam,
so excited. Like when I came
why
back and was like, I got what I wanted. And like they had already kind of like worked it out. They didn't have really much of a choice. But I was like, you guys should have done the opposite of what I said to do. Duh.
well, and that's my question, Sam. Why was there no conversation after Kayla left that tribal council about who to vote for?
Again, I think a lot of us hit the wall like at that point, and so I know for me it was an anyone but me approach. And I heard a name, and I was like, great. I like when I hear a name that's not me. And like I thought, like Yap and I were working together, but then Yap and I had a conversation. I think it backfired on him after he used the extra vote in, or like the seal vote, whatever, in the Jabbar round. And I think he was trying to make me feel better about the decision, but whatever. I can't remember the specifics of the conversation, but I remember walking away feeling like worse about working with him. So I was like, okay, I'll write his name down. But I think at that point, like I think the game was definitely starting to creep in. We were feeling things. And I think it was like one of those things where I think people knew yeah, probably needed to go at some point, and it just probably got, sped up by a couple of rounds.
And I definitely know that Karli and Evan really regret that looking back at it. It's like this is kind of the moment where we lost the game. We lost our chance to get the game. And then, we have a kind of unceremonious, I'm sorry, Simona, but an unceremonious final 6 round where Simona gets voted out. And then we get to final 5. And final 5 is probably the most interesting vote at this point because we have 2 pairs who have been working together the entire, like for the most of the merge, inadvertently, like never coming together as a official floor to work together, but have been working together. And that's Kayla, you and Kyle, and then Evan and Karli, and Sam's in the middle. Sam, this is Battleship. Everyone sucks at this challenge. I'm saying it. Everyone was
Yeah.
so Kayla, I'm sorry, you were terrible at this challenge.
Guys, we couldn't write anything down.
Yeah.
So like, and our brains were fried. We had been online for so many hours. Most of us hadn't really eaten anything all day. Like, it
I
was
had like a
really
handful of
tough.
Cheez-Its at
Yeah.
like noon, and that was my meal.
I thought at one point at like noon, I was like, okay, I'm gonna order sushi so it comes later. By the time I like pulled out my phone to order sushi, it was like 10 p.m. So
Yeah,
Yeah, and-
time gets away from you sometimes in these games. But this challenge goes on a long time because Kayla, I think you guessed the same spot like 4 times in a row. But again, like it is cycling through people, so it's fair. And Sam, you just get a bit lucky here where no one guesses anywhere near your boat until the very end.
And like seeing the graphic back, I was like, man, we were all so close together. Like I was shocked that I had made it in because very similarly, like we couldn't write anything down. We were fried. I definitely did not hear that we could go diagonal. That I don't feel like those are official battleship rules production. So
No.
this challenge was mean.
So. It was okay. I will admit it's a little mean, but only from the fact that it happened so late in the game. I love this challenge. This challenge is a lot of fun. And I think it's really funny seeing the reaction of Kyle when Kayla hits him. And then Kayla, you just kind of get doomed by the fact that someone happened to hit your boat
I hit
prior
myself.
to getting down. Oh yeah, that's right. You hit yourself.
Yeah.
That's right. You hit your boat.
I couldn't find I spent the rest of the game trying to find out where the hell those missing pieces were. So
yeah. But we then get to this point. Sam, you're safe. And it's contentious at this point as to whether or not you would go home in this situation. Kayla, what do you think? What would have happened if Sam hadn't won immunity here? The final 5.
Well, I think I would have gone. I still think I should have gone, even though Sam was safe. I'm very like I don't know what Karli's thought process was on all of that, but yeah, I think had it just been like, I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I think should have been and would have been me.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that because you immediately come into scramble and you're in a room with Karli and Evan. And you're like, I don't want to write Kyle's name down, but like you're the other 2 options. So I guess I'm willing to write Kyle's name down. And Kyle never says he will vote for you in this round.
But what was I supposed to say to them?
Oh, exactly. No, you're
the only other option that wasn't in the room was Kyle. So I was like, obviously I'm gonna say that I'm gonna vote Kyle. Like, in just hopes that they won't write my name down, you know? And I would hope Kyle would do the same thing. I would not be offended if Kyle were saying that to them, you know? And if it came down to it, I might have had to write his name down, you know? But I think
you had an actual decision there to make as to whether or not you wanted to write his name down.
Mm-hmm.
But instead you decided, you know what? No, we are giving Sam all the power in this tribal council. Sam's the one who gets to make the decision here. Sam, what's going through your mind here where at tribal council it becomes very clear Kyle and Kayla are voting Evan. Evan and Karli are voting Kyle, not Kayla, Kyle. Evan even comes into his voting confessional being like, I don't know why we're doing this. This is the wrong decision. But Sam, you kind of just sit back in this tribal council and let it play out and not say a word about which way you are leaning and then just cast your vote. What's going through your mind?
I was not firing on all cylinders based on that challenge performance. So I think I was just trying to like play catch up and trying to internalize where everyone was going and really trying like in the moment in tribal council, do the pro con list of where do I want to go? What am I going to do? How's this going to be perceived? And so, and my mind was running, I wouldn't say like a million miles an hour because it was exhausting at that point, but I was trying to like in the moment really weigh out which way I did ultimately want to go. And like at that point, it was like, I knew at that point, like it was going to be a very hard sell for me to win against any of these, being smack dab in the middle of 2 very strong pairs. And so to me, it was like, I wish I could vote all of them out at this point because they all, you know, Evan, Kayla, and Kyle all had very similar like reasons to why they should go. And at that point, it was just like, I'm tired. Again, anyone but me type approach of like Kayla and Kyle at that point were like interchangeable when it came to some things. And like I just didn't connect with Kyle in maybe the same way I did with Kayla, or like with Evan. I knew at that point I wasn't going to write down Evan's name because he's probably only like one of the only ones that gave like some sort of semblance of wanting to like work with me. And Kayla and I were having like some good conversations along the way, and like Kyle and I just did not click or like have great conversations along the way. So to me, it was like y'all, but like that experience at Tribal is how I felt like in all these other scramble rooms up until that point of just a lot of people talking and not being able to say much. But at that point, I didn't need to say much. I knew where people were going, and I knew Kyle needed to go. Like Kyle and Kayla both needed to go, but only one person could have gone that round. So to me, it was just writing Kyle's name down, and I had written it before, and I was like, finally, we can vote him out.
I mean, sometimes that's just what it comes down to. My bigger curiosity is here is you, for a lot of these episodes leading up to this point, we see you in confessional saying, I need a big move. I need a big move. Like I move that defines myself here. I'm just kind of surprised that you didn't want to just take charge and just say a name at that point when you're completely safe. There's no chance it falls back on you. At this point, I'm assuming you're thinking it's a final 3, so you only have to get through one more vote afterwards. So I'm just wondering, I guess, why you didn't take complete control of the situation there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Whether it was mental fatigue or I just sort of knew, like, I mean, the options were, there weren't that many options. So I knew where people were going. And so ultimately it was like, to me, I thought it was a big move by being able to be that decision maker. And as much as like Kayla was making great points about Evan, I think just like the way I was like perceiving it in the moment, as like, I just wanted to be able to like make the decision on my own and not feel like someone was like trying to get me to go like one way or the other. So
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. We then get into the final 4. Kayla, you have just lost your number 1, who you've been riding with the entire game. You are clearly outnumbered at this point, and you pull off a clutch immunity win by remembering 4 board places of Monopoly in a row. What's it feel like winning? And especially at this point, you think this is a final 3. You think you've just punched your ticket to final tribal council. What's it feel like?
Well, I was so stoked because I had just started playing Monopoly Go like a week before. So like the names were fresh in my head, you know? So like I thought I was gonna do pretty well. And turns out we all did horribly, but somehow I won. It felt great. I was so stoked. I was like, that's it. I'm going to final tribal. I do not care what happens this round. I mean, I cared a tiny bit, but like not really. And I was so excited. I went and washed my face. I was like, I don't care what happens with these people, you know? But that was kind of just like a slap in the face later when that was like not the case. But it felt really good for a few minutes.
Well, and then we get into this scramble, and of course it's Kayla, you're like, guys, get Evan out of here, obviously. Get Evan out of here. And Sam, that Evan is able to appeal to Karli's loyalty, and then it's just to get the split vote, forcing you and him into fire making. And it is extreme flip cup, something that you practiced before
I love
the
that,
game.
Sam.
So talk us through that. Talk us through the practicing of extreme flip cup, what made you do that in the first place, and then the fact that that happens to be this pivotal challenge in the game.
yeah, so I knew coming into this, new org, had no idea these had even existed prior to seeing it on social media. So like over like winter break between like Christmas and New Year's, I watched every single episode of the seasons that were out at that point, and I was making note of like what were the challenges, what were the themes I was seeing. Extreme Flip Cup was one of those things, and so I like went to the dollar store and I bought supplies. I bought dice, I bought ping pong balls, pencils. I was ready to go, and so I had like the cup set up, and so I would just do it like for a few minutes, like in the morning, and then maybe again at night just to get a feel for it, because I was like, if I am coming into this and I know I'm probably playing against people who've done this before. I want a leg up in this. I never thought myself of like a comp beast at all, considering how you saw some of my challenge performance go. But there were other challenges that I did like pretty well on, and I was pretty close to it. And so I had no idea. I figured Extreme Flip Cup would show up at some point in it. I had no idea it was going to be the fire making thing. So when they said that, I was like, it's showtime. Like I know what I'm going to be able to do. So the practice definitely paid off.
And before we get into this final three, both of you have won multiple rewards on this season. How are your rewards faring these days?
I'm happy. It was fun
thanks.
to win like little things here and there, like, just each round it felt like there was something else to win. So it was fun. Good time.
Yeah, we had some wonderful sponsors to thank for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. I love my pop figure.
Yes,
me.
it looks so cool.
Yeah, hold on, let me go get it.
Yes, get it. Have you seen it, John?
I have, yeah.
It's
It's really cool.
And like the cool thing is that he like Todd like signed the back of it. So this is the case. So Todd signed it, and then my guy's like the hot glue kind of came off of my guy, but then so
That's so cool.
It's so awesome.
I love it.
like so that's like the hoodie I wore, and then of course I had to get Moneta bank colors. So yeah, I love it. It's my probably like the item I save in a fire. My dog and then this are probably the two things I save in a fire. So and then the immunity necklace is also really cool as well. So that's kind of like sitting on my bookshelf. So yeah, great sponsorships, great rewards this season.
All right. So now it comes down to this. Evan gets voted. Evan loses fire making. You both think, oh, yes, I'm a final tribal council. And McKenna and Alex are like, well, no. Obviously, it's a final two because you haven't been here long enough. And Kayla, you pull off your fourth individual immunity win. There's a jigsaw puzzle. You then have to stack 10 cups vertically with pencils. Talk about this challenge. Tell me about it. Tell me how it feels to be doing this after 13 hours of playing an org.
Yeah, it's like 1 a.m. or something like that. And I'm doing a jigsaw puzzle on the screen that I've been staring at all day. So like I was struggling, clearly not as much as the others, but I was really struggling. I thought I was going at a snail's pace. But I guess I did all right. And it was really a fun and stressful challenge to do that late in the game. But I think that just like made it so much more exciting because like it got the adrenaline pumping like just in time for like, final tribal and stuff. So I think it was good. It was really fun. I got to like kick it down and yeah. I mean, I'll win every challenge. Like it's the best feeling.
So, Sam, after losing this challenge, all of a sudden, it's a final two. So, essentially, that means, it literally means Kayla has all of the power and the decision of who she's going to take final tribal council. What are you thinking in this moment, and how are you pitching yourself in order to make sure that it's you sitting beside Kayla and not you sitting as the last juror?
I think my pitch was pretty simple, that Karli had a lot of friends on the jury and I didn't.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I was almost like my conversation with Karli was first, and I was like so exhausted that I was almost just like, she's right. I got to do what Karli's telling me to do. But the second I got back in a room with Sam, I like snapped out of it. I was like, get it together, Karli played a good game and so did Sam, but I think Karli having like the closeness to Evan, like I was just too afraid of Evan in the end of this game because I know I had worked with him. So if I had worked closely with somebody, like unless it was Kyle sitting next to me, that I could be like, you thought you did this, that was me. Like I didn't want anybody who could claim anything that I did,
Yeah, absolutely. It makes total sense. And then, well, that takes us to final tribal council. And you sit down, you give your opening speeches again after, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning at this point now. and you're giving your opening speeches, and we get to some jury questions. So I didn't have a chance to go through these jury questions on the last After Stuff, so I'm just going to go through them now. Jabbar asks if you can keep one of physical, social, or strategic. Which one do you keep? Getting rid of the other two. Vogl comes up and asks you to stroke his ego, which again, we have to pause on this question, right? You two had very different responses to this question. So, Sam, I'm going to start with you. You decide to just appease Vogl and talk about his game here. What goes into that decision there of how you approach this question? Is there a right way to answer this question?
I don't know. Like, and there was just it was hard to handle that question, and that's why I asked. I was like, I need you to like repeat it because I need to I need to like play like catch up on it. And he had just come across so just like bombastic. It was just like, I'm gonna say what I think you need to hear. But again, it was 2 a.m. and not firing on all cylinders at that point. So to met with that type of energy when we had just gone through, like we had just thought we were final three, we had a nice little moment, and then the rug gets pulled up from under us. We do a very hard challenge. We're exhausted, and that was just kind of like, okay, like just kick me while I'm down. Why don't you?
Yeah, there was a lot of kicking while you were down that didn't make the episode. Kayla, you did the exact opposite. You essentially said, fuck you, Vogl.
I wish I had
And
said that.
and you just do, you know what? I have said this to production many, many times. And I'm like, you know how you get my vote of final tribal council? You tell someone off. And you did it. You actually told him something off. So is this a result of just like frustration with the way that this question's being posed? Is it just exhaustion being like, I don't have time for this? Like, was this just an emotional response, or is this more of a calculated response?
No offense to the people in the chat, but it was a response to the man trying to tell me what to do. So I guess you could say it was an emotional response. Like the second he started speaking and like you could feel that it was like fighting energy, I just like I got hot, my whole face started sweating. I just saw red, like I was just like fire coming out of my head. And it was so late. So to meet us with like that at that time when like we were just like at that point we were just like being nice to everybody. We're like, you're doing a really good job. Like
We were so nice
really
at the
great.
end.
And then to have that fighting energy, like, oh, disgusting. I hated it.
Well, I do think, and Evan said this in his After the Stuff, that like you secured his vote with your response to that question.
I secured Vogel's vote with my response to that
Yeah,
question.
yeah, right. And it is one of those things where you stood up for yourself, and that is something that is commendable in this game, especially in a social game, right? Because I think it's totally reasonable to do what you did here too, Sam, and just like appease it. It's like, whatever, I'm going to give you what you want because
I wasn't
you're
gonna
going
get his
second
vote
too.
anyways. Like, let's be real. I wasn't getting his vote anyways, so it didn't matter what I had said.
I don't know. I think you were closer to getting his vote than you thought because I think, especially with Kayla responding that way, I think maybe just being like, yo, Vogl, you were good is enough to get the vote in that situation. The question is, I think, and why the way this question worked out is so interesting in a final tribal council is you're not just weighing how, if you're getting that juror's vote, you're weighing what your response is doing to all the other jurors at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So we get into Yap, who asks the question about the passage of information. Sam, of course, you're in the middle, and you kind of have ties to both sides, but they're both kind of leaving you out of the loop. Kayla, you had Evan feeding you most of the information, even though there were times when he was feeding you false information. Simona asks what your favorite part of the game was. Very tired Simona, because it's like 5 o'clock in the morning where she is. Nope, later. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning.
She was like
where she
getting
was
up
at that
for the
point.
day.
Yeah.
She was like asking a question and then going on a wine tour
Yep.
immediately. Then of course Kyle's question comes along. Kyle asked what happened when he went home. just a simple conversation about that, because he kind of left in an instance where, there were some allegations placed against you, Kayla, and like throwing him under the bus, and he wanted clarification on that. Evan asks why you didn't target Karli, and then Karli asks about truth and whether or not there was anything you said to her that was true the entire game. And this is an interesting talking point. So I want both of you. We'll start with Sam. I was just ruminating on the power of truth and lying in this game, and whether or not you need to be truthful and or honest with people, and if there's a difference between truth and honesty.
Yeah, I feel like that's a great question. I think it's in a mini, sometimes it's even hard. I've had conversations with other people just around like things move so fast when it comes to things about like lying and things like that. It's hard to even try to get some of that. So I think like you can be honest, where I think people were maybe like honest like after and wanted to clear things up like after a vote went, if it didn't go like one way or not. But I think you have to be truthful at some point in the game, whether it's true, like you're gonna be true to yourself and how you like want to play the game.
Kayla, I need to know, was there anything truthful you ever said to Karli in the game?
I mean, probably not. Karli and I didn't really get to talk for like, so she was the last person I had any kind of conversation with, and it was like round after round that like we should have had a conversation and didn't. And that was like partially because of me. I was, taking note of who was talking to who and like the alliances forming. And she was just like, I kind of like had like a finger on her through Evan and didn't like really feel like I needed to like nurture that relationship. It didn't feel like much of an issue to me at the time. And like by the time we talked, it was so freaking late in the game that I was just like, I have no truth for you. And I think truth like is important, but like it's Survivor. Like you're allowed to lie. Like there's no rule against lying. Like your goal is to get to the end of the game, and like whatever you have to do, like you should do. If I'm lying to you in a board game in the living room, like does that make me a liar?
Mhm.
No. So like I wanted to like get a little practice in and see what I could do. And there was just nothing to tell her that was true. And I wasn't gonna just be like, I have nothing to say. Like obviously I'm gonna lie. Right?
Absolutely. So we get there's also a twist that happens at the end of this game. And Kayla, you have the opportunity to reward one of the jurors an extra vote. You immediately give it to Kyle. You say it's obvious. How
Duh.
obvious was it to give it to Kyle?
I just like, who else would I give it to? Like, I'm sure I could have like thought of somebody else that would vote for me, but like, it was like, like my little gift to him for being my ally.
So those go in, and after the votes are cast, Sam, you make that comment about practicing extreme flip cup beforehand. Which granted, you should have said that in Final Tribal Council. That's a good thing to say in Final Tribal Council.
Did I say it at Tribal? Didn't I say it at Tribal Council? Wasn't that Simona's question?
You said it. No, you said it after the votes were cast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I have a question now. Like you practiced, and you studied them. What's your biggest takeaway from this season that a prospective new player should look for? Yeah, after coming into this completely fresh, but having studied up beforehand.
Well, I think number one, you practice, particularly maybe charades, or there are some classic, DCP challenges. So I think practicing being able to, be able to flip a cup, throw a ping pong ball, I think is really important. But I think probably the biggest takeaway, especially in a mini like format, is knowing how to navigate the rooms in the Zoom rooms and knowing when to leave. And I think, again, Kayla, you did such a good job. But like, there's too many people in here. I'm gonna go over here. And so I think probably the biggest takeaway is just learning the mechanics and logistics. There's a lot of things to figure out, particularly in a mini, but if you can navigate how to use the rooms effectively, and to know that you don't have as much time as you think you do. So say what you need to say, and then move on to the next thing. So I think learning how to navigate the Zoom rooms is probably the most important thing to do.
And I think there's no wrong or right way to do it. Like your style of gameplay could easily be the winning gameplay in another game. It's just about like the cast you're with or the twists, and like a huge part of it is luck. So I think all gameplays are valid. Mine would never work in any other game, you know?
I don't disagree with that. I think you get clocked a lot earlier with just a slightly different cast. You change two people in this cast and it's a completely different game.
Yeah.
Just by the way that they are going to approach the game, the way they're going to view the game. But alas, that isn't what happens. And instead we get the votes back, and Sam, you get 1 vote from Karli, and the rest of the votes fall on you, Kayla. You are the winner of Moneta Bank. How does it feel?
It feels great. I love having a crown on my head. I love being the winner. It genuinely was so fun. It made it so worth the whole day. And either way, it was fun. But I really thought I was gonna go so early because I knew I was gonna like not really be able to like reel it in too much. But it ended up helping me, and it's just so fun. I was like, you know, it was like hard to go to sleep that night. I had to be up so early, and I was like, I gotta go to bed, but I was just like spinning in my head.
Well, you know what? We've kind of come to the end of it. We've discussed all of the games. Sam, is there anything else you want to say about your game, your experience playing your first mini that we haven't covered yet?
No, I mean, I think like I came into this game, I humbled myself a lot. Like this is my very first time playing. So I definitely came in for the experience and to see what happens. And so I knew going into this that the chances of me winning were probably like slim to none, but I was just happy to kind of experience the whole thing, and for DCP to be kind of like my first org experience, and the fact that I made it all the way to the end, considering how the game started, I was really happy with how it all turned out for me.
How about you, Kayla? Any last things you want to say about your game?
I just think the cast was so phenomenal, and the production quality of this game was like so wonderful. Like it was so smooth and fun, and it was just like a great day. The theme of like the bank pulling into all of the challenges was just like, it was just
so well done.
A great day. It was so cool.
Well, I'm sure that everyone on production is very happy to hear that. You can talk praise about us. We'll take it. It's fine. But alas, that's the end. There's one last thing we have to do, because we do it at the end of every After the Snuff. Sam, what is one word to describe your game?
Unexpected.
Right. Kayla.
Chill.
Yeah, that is the opposite of what your game was.
I didn't see it that way.
No, well, I'm pretty sure everyone else did. But you know what? I dig it. I dig it as your answer. I'm surprised you didn't just go with like a winner, but that's fine. I like the thought process there. And that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into After the Snuff this season. It's been an absolute delight to speak not only with Sam and Kayla tonight, but with the entire cast of Moneta Bank this season. It is what a phenomenal cast. Just fantastic people all around. Excellent people to talk to. The episodes are over. There is so much after the episode content that we have put out this week that is either already out or is still to come. There is so much of it. There's the After the Snuff with Evan and Karli, in addition to these two. There's the cast reunion. That's always exciting. We have all the jurors' confessionals from Final Tribal Council. We have secret scenes. We have Ponderosa scenes. We also are going to have the production draft update, where you can see how production feels about the cast and how everything went down. So make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, because yes, Moneta Bank's coming to a close. There's all those videos to watch, but you might also want to know when casting goes up for our next mini, and also just when more episodes air of our next season, which may be coming sooner than you might think. So stay tuned. Thank you for tuning in once again, and everyone Have yourself a wonderful night.